We're going to talk about sanders. Before we do, I'm going to allow the Facebook Live community to accumulate for a moment while I take care of a couple of small things down here. Talking about sanders. And I'm not talking about belt sanders. I'm not talking about there are a whole bunch of kinds of sanders I'm not talking about. I'm discussing the inflatable drum sanders. Not talking about Eric Sanders. I certainly ain't talking about no Terry Cloth. I ain't talking about Terry Garr. Certainly ain't talking about no Terry Cloth. We're talking about sanders that we use for our edge, for finishing the edges of our boards, okay? And I've got two of them in my shop. This was the tool I bought last. So I'm going to show you the one I bought. You've seen it before if you follow my videos. I'm going to turn the camera around for you to get a real look. This is a Sandrite with a Baldor Reliance industrial motor. Let's take a look. Horsepower. You know what? It's got a special horsepower. We got volts and amps. We got RPMs are 1140, not changeable. And you know what's interesting? It doesn't have horsepower on there. I wonder if that's because this sander has a lower horsepower in the motor than it does usually in that container. I don't know the possibilities. But the Sandrite unit that I purchased without a stand, I believe it ran me over 10 years ago. That ran me $1,400. $1,400. This is made in the USA, legit, by Sandrite's affiliate, Baldor Reliance Industrial. I wonder if it has any Sandrite. No, it doesn't have any Sandrite markings. Let's take another look here. We got this one here. That's not good focus. It's got single phase fixed rotation. All right. It doesn't say Sandrite on it, but the Sandrite company sells this motor and the drums. Now, these drums, I'm going to turn you around again. These drums are awesome. Come on. All right. These drums are soft rubber inside of canvas, and they're very, very pliable. They're easy to change pressure on. And now I'm a low production workshop, but these drums keep the sandpaper on them very, very long time, lasts a long time. And I got the, 9-inch and the 6-inch or the something like that. And I didn't know what I was doing. If I had it all to do again, I would get, and you can do this, I would get a flap sander on this side that can actually reach up and inside the top concave so that I could do all of my finish sanding with a flap sander, because if I'm making 100 boards a month, that's a good clip. Could I make 200? Yeah, if I had nothing else to do, I could make 200 boards a month in a workshop like this with a couple more presses, but that's all I'd need. This being a flap sander would do me real good. And Sam Cook over at Life Skateboards, you can look at his workshop and you'll see he's got a couple units like this in there. I think all of his motors are Grizzly motors, but he's got flap sanders and different kinds of whip sanders on his. I would go with a big flap sander, and this is plenty adequate. I do most of my board sanding on this one. I keep this medium soft, and this one usually I keep very soft. Now that's tough on them, and that's tough on your sandpaper. And I use this one for the very last pass smoothing. I have 80 grit on them, and It's a good setup. That's what I've used making skateboards for the last 10 years. Now, my buddy Sam at Life was doing some stuff and he wound up ditching. Now, this is the one I decided not to get in the beginning. And the decision was based on a couple things. I called up a Grizzly distributor and I had a really strong talk with him. And I said, hey, I know these are made in China. This is a 1 horsepower, 1725 RPM. That's a much higher RPM, by the way. That one over there is 1140 or something like that. This one is 1725. It is from 2007. That's really interesting to see with its handwritten serial numbers. Handwritten serial numbers on there. That's pretty cool. I'm going to switch you around so you can see that yourself. So this one is an interesting one. You can pause that screen, grab it, and look at it. When I spoke to the Grizzly people, they were very frank with me, and they said, look, these are Chinese made. They change year to year, and it's not entirely certain that you'll always have the same peripheral things. I think that was pretty much not true. You can buy new drums for these, but one of the other deciding factors for me beyond peripheral stuff was these drums are not canvas over rubber. These are thick rubber drums. They are pneumatic fill. They are hard rubber, and they aren't as, you can't get these soft enough to really enjoy working mad numbers of skateboards through them. Now this one is really soft. I tried leaving it soft, and what happened was, as I put a skateboard on it, this just moved around. So there's a lot to be said for the Sandrite drums. Now, I think that's $1,200 for that motor I paid. A lot. It was the last thing I bought, and I kind of broke down and said, okay, I'll just buy it. I did not have any more money than that at the time, and I decided, okay, I've tried making them with everything else. I'm going to go with a Sandrite. It is the right long term, and I have hashtag no regrets spelled with a Z at the end. But now that I have this one in here, I'll put a flap on this one and see how well I can do. Couple of things about sanders I saw just this week. First thing I saw was one of our homies out there in the board makers movement. I can't remember which one of you it is. I apologize. That's as far as this thing shoots. Made a sleeve to put Sandrite drums on a Grizzly motor. That's what I'm talking about. Another one in the makers movement, two I know of, have bought just a motor and built themselves their own drum sanding capacity from scratch. That one gets one thumb up because it's really impressive. That is heavy. That's a heavy accomplishment for a lot of beginners. And the makers movement, my work with the makers movement remains really focused on beginners and getting someone from a 0 to a 1, you know, where they had nothing. I want to see them have something, because with just something, you can do an insane contribution. You can make an insane contribution to skateboarding with just a very rudimentary thing. Let me tell you, one reason I was okay with running a Grizzly that I got for super cheap or free, I can't remember, and the Sandrite for super expensive was because at the rate that I was making boards, 100 a month was my ceiling. I had 175 a few months, but 100 a month was it. All I could handle with all the marketing, the relations, and then all the crazy industry political static really put a crimp in my hose. So I was happy to go with package sanders, and I encourage you to do the same. Spend $300 on a Grizzly or $1,400 on that. Well, the reason I went with that, Sandrite, was because those drums really were the thing. Now, we've got some crazy fool in the makers movement who had his friend machine a sleeve so that he could put these really good sanding bags onto a Grizzly. That is the coup right there. Has to do with the spindle diameter is different on the two machines. And so this has been a word about sanders, edge sanding specifically. We have lots to talk about routers. I have gone through a bit of a transformation on my view of routing over the years and years and years. And I have a really squirrely opinion about routing the edges of boards. It may fly in the face of the higher end conventional wisdom, but I'll do routing again. We're going to talk about edge routing now that we've done sanding. But I think that for me, if now that I have an established workshop, I'll be very likely to go through the next several years. Anthony Velvet, good to see you, buddy. Love you, my dude. I am very likely to go through the next 5 years of my work with just these units. If I had $1 million, if I had $1 million, I'd build a sanding unit from scratch, and it would have vacuuming that kept the dust down. If I had $1 million. I love that song. Who is that? Bare Naked Ladies from way back in the day. So, if I had $1 million, I would build not only would I run a sander from scratch, and all of the other spindles, same motor, would be running on a multiple speed switch. I'd be running a sanding bag for edges. I'd be running a flap for bellies and tops. I would also be running a very long vertical belt sander that is 45 inches, 48 inches long, that I'd be able to change the speed and do work on that. All of it would be downdrafted and bagged for making sweeping compound for my motorcycle oil and stuff like that out there in the backyard. So if I had the money and the time and the wherewithal to get the right information and safely build that, all the pulleys and everything would be underneath the Necros. They probably sang everything, dude. That's Cover City. If Necros was just a cover band, bro. This has been a good talk about sanding, specifically drum sanders for edge sanding. You know, I also do the bellies of my boards on that drum sander. I run the belly sanding on that, and then I just touch it up with a 240 grit. I don't do almost any palm sanding beyond touch up the belly after the holes are drilled, knock off all the flash, and then I hit the top as rough as it comes. I hit it with a 240, unless it's got glue on it, then I'll use an 80 or a 60 to take off the glue. And I just polish the rough of the tops. And you can count on me, that's what I make. I will not do differently because I'm Lou Ross and this is as far as it shoots. So, signing off, Captain Lou talking about sanders. Happy to see I don't see your faces. I was going to say, I'm happy to see your faces. I'm happy that you decided to see my face. That's a decision that's on you. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back with more.